So I invite you now to turn on your mic if you have some comment or question, or you can put it in the chat if you'd rather not talk. If not, we'll just remain here as being, consciousness, and bliss.
Rishi Ji, could I ask you something?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to see you. Thank you. Every time, very grateful to see you. My question is about integrity, because I feel the more time I dedicate to self-inquiry and I just recognize my nature, I see that what I'm doing in my dynamic expression or what I'm saying, it's not always in line with this purity inside. So it feels like it's not always so pure outside as it seems inside. And that sometimes I see I'm just a space and it's so clean and there's just this purity, and then I speak to someone I know for a long time, or there's just some conditioning, and what is coming outside in speech or in actions, it does not reflect this purity. So I was just wondering what can be done about it, or just, to truly live in this recognition so that what comes out of us in our actions, expression, that it's also in line with this recognition. Thank you.
Yes, this is a very good question. There are really two aspects that I can speak to about this experience that you're describing. One is to begin to notice as soon as you encounter someone that you've known for a long time or you're familiar with. See if you can notice that as soon as you see them, as soon as they're in front of you or you hear their voice, mind, through habit and conditioning, immediately returns to the previous experience you've had with that person. Yes, is this so? Yes. So before you've even said a word, before they've said a word, your meeting is manifesting or rising in a very limited space. It's rising in the limited space of your own experience of that person, and whatever that resulted in, whatever the projections are around that, whatever the expectations are around that. So you're already in a very limited space. But if you begin to take up as a practice, if you will, the noticing of exactly the way the mind begins to close in on an object or close in on a person or close in on a relationship, and you consciously open the heart and drop the thoughts about that relationship, about that person, about the previous experiences. You expand the space in which your interaction can remain the way that you're talking about, with integrity, with an open heart. So if your intention, or if your practice, if you will, becomes to open when you greet someone that you are familiar with or you speak to them, which is usually in opposition to the conditioning or the habit which we develop around people we've known a long time or experiences we've had before, which is to narrow our focus and to close, to fall into the experience of thinking we know something. If we can stay in the experience of openness, of knowing nothing, of allowing whatever wants to manifest in this moment without a connection to a previous moment, now the possibility is there for something new to come in the relationship. And also, because we've paused just for that moment, because this all happened. When I describe it like this, it seems to be a sequential thing. But when we're actually engaged in this kind of recognition of openness, let's say, let's name it that, when we take this up as our constant habit, we very seldom speak before we think, because our natural response is not to be aware of what we're thinking or not to be trying to catch a previous experience, but rather to be opening the heart to whatever it wants to manifest at this moment. This creates a whole nother space, and it creates an opportunity, in fact, in relationship, especially with parents and siblings and partners and so on, for something unexpected to manifest, for something to show itself about that person, about the relationship, about the experience. So that's the first thing, is to open up rather than narrowing into the past and into the previous experience with that person. That's the very first thing. The second point is to remember to be kind to ourselves through the recognition, the remembrance, that anytime we are engaged in any kind of interaction with another person, with an experience, with a circumstance, everything is rising codependently or interdependently. What I mean by this is we cannot control the way that any particular interaction with any particular person or group of people manifests, because we are in some ways we're dealing with incomplete information. If we think that the only reason we are responding in a certain way or not responding in a certain way is because of our own desire, our own intention, right? There must be a recognition always that the interaction of any group of people, any two people, is always dependent on what both people, if you will, are bringing to the experience. You cannot know in advance how you will respond or react to a situation because you don't know what's bringing that situation into being. You don't know, is it for your benefit, for their benefit? Is it to clear something in your space of consciousness, to clear something in their space of consciousness? Is it to explore some conditioning or some habit pattern? There are so many variables that it's impossible for you to know the reasons at a very basic level why you say what you say, do what you do, respond in the way you respond, and so on. So the answer to this recognition, or the maybe the practice, is to express for yourself, for other, compassion, love, and understanding. Sometimes you are able, all of us are able, to sit in the self, to remain open, to allow whatever happens to happen, and no reactivity comes from us. This is the sign of mastery, of beginning to understand that you are the self. If you are fully understanding this, then there's no need for the conversation about what is happening. Did I say the right thing? Did I not say the right thing? You will always say the right thing. You will always do the right thing. And sometimes that can involve love, kindness, compassion, caring, support, all of these things. At other times, it becomes like a sharp sword, right? This happens in relationship. If you are asking yourself the question, who is this one who is engaged in this activity or this relationship? If you're always asking yourself that question, you can trust that what needs to happen is what is happening. You know, if there's love, kindness, and compassion in everything you do, even if you must be sharp with someone, direct with someone, if you must say, no, stop this, this is also coming from kindness and compassion. If you are settled in the self, if you are open, and this kind of, you chop off someone's head, then you must trust that this is what the situation required, and this is what the self was asking. You can trust this. Understand that as you take on the position of truth in your own life, you sometimes are required to take on the position of truth in others' lives as well. So you may speak in some way, you may say something that when you reflect on it afterwards, you say, oh, maybe I could have said that differently. Maybe I could have done that differently. But there's a question to that. Could you have said that differently? Could you have done it differently? Or were you in the moment? Was it necessary for that chop to happen? Yes? You must trust life in some way. And this is in order to trust life, you have to give up the idea that you are the one that's in control and you will always do what's exactly right according to what you expect of yourself, because you may not. You may react in a way that you look back on it and go, oh, that happened so quickly. There was no way I could stop myself from saying that, you know? Well, then you have to look at the whole situation. And of course, we aren't able to do that. As simple human beings, we can't look back through all the karmic involvement that brought us to that moment. So then we have to just trust. So you remain open. If you feel yourself clamp down in a situation, even when that happens, you open again. So you come to this place where you recognize that what your activity is in any relationship is not to be trying to figure out with the mind, how can I stay in control? How can I do the right thing? How can I say the right thing? You are always only looking to your own center. Is it open? Is it available for anything in a loving, kind, compassionate way? Or is it closed into identity with the personality? And is it acting out of personality, out of a personal sense of gain or loss, defense or offense? If you are simply open as presence, being, consciousness, then you just let the play happen. Whose play is it? You see?
I just see, thank you so much, that each time I'm closed, whatever I'm speaking, whatever I'm doing, it's like a repetition. Because depending on to whom I speak, there are projections from both sides. So it's like turning in circles.
Yes,
And
of
sometimes
course.
painful because there's a wish to break out of this and a strong conditioning to do everything right, not to harm anyone, to be.
Which is part of the cycling of it.
Yes, so that it keeps
Yes,
many days.
absolutely. Yes, but it's so beautiful that you're seeing this, because if you can see this, then you can see that the only real possibility is to step out of it completely, not to continue with your conditioning versus their conditioning versus your conditioning versus their conditioning. Even if your intention is to understand, to be the kindest person that ever lived, doesn't make any difference. That's still conditioning. The only opportunity you really have to break that cycle that you're pointing at, that you're seeing, it's so beautiful, is just to step out of it. You do this by falling into openness, falling directly into don't know, and the willingness to be present in don't know, in don't understand, the willingness to slay your own ego in that moment. This is the gift this person is giving you. They may be arguing with you, not knowing at all what they're doing, but what they're actually doing is giving you the opportunity to chop off your own head. So do it.
Thank you so much. Thank
All right. Always remember to treat yourself with kindness and compassion, whatever your experience is. Anytime you can't figure out what it is you need to do, come back to love. This is your nature. Many of us take up the practice to treat others with kindness, compassion, and love. And we forget to treat ourselves with kindness, compassion, and love. So make it your habit to give yourself first this kindness, compassion, and love. And then it will become a powerful force in your life and in the world around you. Remember that you are free, eternal, unbound. You are truth. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrichor Mukshiyamamritawa Svaha Bhuva Bhu Om Sat Jung Om. Namaste. Be well and happy.